Listening to WICR, Iona College Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bobby Baez, and welcome to yet another edition of the Countout. I am your Iona College's voice of professional wrestling. So now let's get right down to it. So obviously, around the time of late March, early April, it's always the busiest week in the world of the WWE specifically, because this is usually WrestleMania time, and this year's WrestleMania 32 in AT&T Stadium. Now, you know, a lot of the fans had some worries because they assumed that this WrestleMania was going to be lackluster, that it wasn't going to be as good as previous ones, because the card didn't really look that strong. Obviously with injuries to guys like Seth Rollins, John Cena, and Randy Orton, and others, of course, the card didn't look as strong as Vince McMahon wanted it to be. But overall, it was a pretty entertaining WrestleMania. It wasn't the greatest of all time, but I've heard a lot of fans online especially say that it was one of the worst, and I'm just saying, like, I don't really see how you could say it's one of the worst. There were some low points, of course, but it was definitely not one of the worst. Couple things I want to point out. It was the most attended. It was the biggest WrestleMania of all time. I'm pretty sure it might have had like the most viewership. I don't know if it had the most viewership actually, but I do know for a fact that it broke 2 attendance records. It broke the WrestleMania attendance record of over 101,000, as well as the AT&T Stadium attendance record, which is, of course, same number. And so, it was the longest WrestleMania in terms of duration. It was almost 5 hours, which was by far the longest of all time. So it was an extravaganza. It was huge, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was perfect. Okay, so I'm going to highlight some of the best and worst things about it. First, about the matches. Some of the best matches on the card, of course, you had the Intercontinental Championship ladder match. Now, this match, it's a ladder match. You could pretty much always count on a ladder match being entertaining. I was a little skeptical, of course, because the guys that were in the ladder match weren't exactly high names. They weren't exactly superstar, with the exception of like maybe Kevin Owens and Stardust maybe, or Dolph Ziggler. But the reality is that a lot of these guys weren't exactly high on the card, so that's why I assumed the ladder match wasn't going to be great. But then I realized to myself, wait, it's a ladder match. Of course it's going to be entertaining, and I was proven wrong. It was definitely one of the more entertaining matches of the night, and so that was a high point, of course. Another high point, which I expected, was AJ Styles and Chris Jericho. Now, I wasn't really a huge fan of the match because they've already had 3 matches, and I feel like because it wasn't a special stipulation, it just would have been the same thing over and over again. But it proved to be one of the better matches of the night, because these guys are some of the best performers in the world, so they delivered. They had a great match, and it was thoroughly entertaining. Then you had the women's match, and now for some news, the term Divas is gone. The Divas Championship is gone. It's now become the WWE Women's Championship once again. So there was a triple threat match, of course, between Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks for that championship, and Charlotte ended up retaining, which I wasn't at first. I didn't like the decision because I'm a huge fan of Sasha Banks and also Becky Lynch. But then I realized if they have Charlotte lose, she'll never be a women's champion. She'll just be like the old Divas champion. So, booking wise, it is what it is. But the match itself was excellent. And then, of course, you have Shane McMahon and The Undertaker. That match, while the match itself wasn't exactly a classic, it had a lot of cool spots in it. The one obvious one is the one that even non-wrestling fans probably saw on social media when Shane McMahon was on top of the cell and he jumped on the announce table. Undertaker moved out the way and he pretty much almost killed himself. So there was that. Of course, Undertaker ended up winning the match. A lot of people were upset because they feel like if Shane did all that, he should at least win the match. But then what doesn't make sense is if he jumped off a cell and almost killed himself, how was he able to win? That wouldn't make sense. So the Undertaker ended up winning that one. And those are really the good matches on the card. Some of the low points, the pre-show matches, I can care less about. Couldn't care less about. There we go, get that right. We had the U.S. title match, which was the very first pre-show match. Kalisto won, no surprise. The Usos and the Dudleys for the 80th time, and then 81st time on Raw. Didn't care about that one either. And the women's match, well, this is probably a Divas match because they're on a show called Total Divas. Tag team match, pre-show, I didn't care about that one either, so I'm not going to talk about those. But some of the low points to me, the match between Brock Lesnar and Dean Ambrose, I was disappointed in this match immensely. Not in the result, because the result was kind of predictable. Where you had, uh, Brock Lesnar winning, of course. I wasn't surprised at all by that. What surprised me was how short the match was, and two, how just street fight like it was. It was, and also how lopsided the match was. Now I know Brock is supposed to be like the beast. He's supposed to be almost unstoppable, but Dean Ambrose, with all the promos he did and everything else, he was supposed to come off as indestructible and how he'd get up from anything. And all he did was take 13 German suplexes, one F5, and that was it. Sure, it was on chairs, but it just seemed lopsided. And also, I'm honestly starting to get tired of Brock Lesnar. His appearances aren't as special anymore, because all he does is get paid nearly $10 million. He's one of the highest paid superstars in the WWE. And I'm just saying, I don't know why. All he does is German suplex, German suplex, German suplex, throw an occasional belly-to-belly suplex, German suplex, F5, he wins. His matches aren't great anymore because he keeps doing this. I'm pretty sure he has the ability to do other things, but he just does the same thing, and it's starting to get really stale. And that match at WrestleMania proved it. It was completely lopsided. Dean Ambrose stood no chance. Hit it with a kendo stick a couple times. That was it. That was really it. And that was by far the most disappointing match of the night. Then you have the segment that had The Rock. Now, The Rock came out in this huge entrance, did his typical, catchphrases. And out the Wyatt family came in. I was like, this is getting interesting now. Okay, it's getting interesting. And so you had, The Rock cutting a promo on the Wyatt family, and then he wanted to have an impromptu match with one of them, and Eric Rowan came out, rock bottom. He won in 6 seconds, which I felt was useless. There was really no point in doing all that. There was no point in having it, but it is what it is, whatever. And then he was going to get attacked by all three, and then John Cena came out, after he was supposed to be out for about 7 months with his shoulder injury, came back in about 3. Now, I don't know if he's medically cleared to wrestle. Maybe that was just a one-time appearance. I don't know. But he came out, gave... then he helped out The Rock, plain and simple. That segment, although it's The Rock, personally, I'm getting a little tired of The Rock, him coming back. It's not special to me anymore, just like with Brock. Brock and Rock. But, segment, it didn't help anyone, really. It didn't help The Rock get over, because The Rock doesn't need to get over. He's already a huge superstar. It didn't help John Cena get over, because he's already buried people before. And it didn't help the Wyatts, because they weren't on the card, and they just got disposed of, like that. So it didn't make sense to me. And I'm actually talking about a match that came before this segment, which was the tag team match, which for some reason wasn't for the tag team titles. You had the New Day against the League of Nations. Now, the match, it should have been for the titles. If it's WrestleMania, you have to have it for the title. It just has to be. But it wasn't, and for some reason, the tag team champions, the New Day, ended up losing. But that was just so Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, and Mick Foley can come out and, I guess, I don't know, beat up the League of Nations. And there was a promo with New Day and those three. Xavier Woods got stunned, and then that was that. That was a cool moment to see those 3 future Hall of Famers come out, but the match itself wasn't really great, and it also seemed pretty useless to have on the card if it wasn't for the titles. Then you have the main event, which was only called that because it was the last match, not because it's the match people wanted to see. It was Triple H and Roman Reigns. Now, people were already burnt out from the whole Shane McMahon, Undertaker, Hell in a Cell match, and from the whole promo with The Rock and John Cena. So this match was already destined to fail, and it pretty much did. Now, this match was not great. Triple H really carried Roman Reigns throughout the entire match. He was doing great. Roman, on the other hand, he didn't really do anything until the end, and he ended up winning the title. And rumors tell me, actually, that he got, vociferous. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm not a wordsmith, but really, really intense boos from the AT&T Stadium crowd. And the production team, they changed the audio to make it to kind of drown out the boos, to make it sound like it was less, which really I feel like is desperate. That's just desperate to try to get Roman over when he's pretty much never gonna get over. I personally don't dislike him that much. I rather him than Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose is overrated to me, but that's just kind of pushing. If the fans can't get him, if you can't get him over with the fans, then that's it. There are guys who have had their careers end because they can't get over with the fans. But yet Roman Reigns is being forced to get over even though he's not over. So, I don't know. And now I'm going to talk about, I guess that kind of goes with best and worst moments as well, really. I'm going to talk about some of, the theatrics. When it comes to WrestleMania, one thing you always look forward to, other than the matches, of course, and maybe other than the celebrity appearances, are the celebrity appearances. Luckily there was not a performance this year at WrestleMania, thank goodness, because most wrestling fans do not want to see performances at wrestling shows. They had it last year at 31, and no one cared. I was really, because I do not like Flo Rida. I think he sucks, but I was really hoping that he didn't perform at this year WrestleMania. He didn't. I was relieved that there wasn't a performance at all. I was relieved by that, so that was great. I almost forgot. You had the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and there were some surprises in there. You had DDP come out. You had Tatanka come out. And the weird one is you had Shaquille O'Neal. Yes, Shaquille O'Neal made an appearance at WrestleMania 32 and was actually part of a quote-unquote match. Now, of course, he didn't win. You wouldn't have him win because, there's wrestlers in there who were trained to do what they do. But it was kind of funny, kind of cool seeing, because Shaq does everything. So it was kind of cool seeing him in there. But, of course, he didn't win. Baron Corbin actually ended up winning. He was known for being on NXT. So that basically means he got called up to the main roster from NXT and won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. So that was a pretty good, push for him. So, to make him look like, he's something serious. But in terms of entrances, there were 3 I really loved. First one was the New Day's entrance. They had, if you don't know New Day, they had this whole thing where they had this fake cereal called Bootios. Then they had this huge giant box of it on the stage, and they all came out wearing the Ginyu costumes from Dragon Ball Z, so that was really cool. Another one was when Sasha Banks made hers. Obviously, she's related to Snoop Dogg, that they're cousins, and he actually performed. Wow, that doesn't count as a performance because it was part of an entrance. So he performed like her song, and then she came out, with Snoop. So that was really cool. And of course, he had Triple H's. I'm not really gonna describe it. It was just a whole thing. Triple H is known for WrestleMania entrances, so I was definitely not disappointed with his. But overall, it was a good WrestleMania. It wasn't an all-time great WrestleMania, but it was not one of the worst. There were some moments that, booking-wise, made me scratch my head. Like, I know why they did it now, but not having New Day defend the tag team titles didn't make sense to me. Not having the Wyatt family on the card didn't make sense to me. The Lesnar-Ambrose match was a dud, and the main event was a dud too, but it was predictable. So, that is pretty much WrestleMania 32 in a nutshell. Now, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about a wrestling show that happened 2 days before WrestleMania, and what many of the smart internet wrestling fans believe was the better show. Although I don't think it was that. It was close, but I don't think it was better. And that is NXT TakeOver Dallas. So, after this break, we will be right back, and I will talk about and review some of NXT TakeOver Dallas. So, stay tuned.